Good morning. Sorry, thanks very much. It's good to be here. Thanks for your time joining this session. I think the only sort of smallish admin piece to mention is that we have got a bit of time later on. We should have a bit of time towards the end of the session to take some questions or any comments that come along. So if you want to use the chat during the session while you think of things, then by all means, please pop questions or comments in there, and we'll pick them up and look to have a feedback on them towards the end of the session, like I say. Brief introduction to me. I'm Rob DeBell, as Jenny said. I'm the delivery director here at Bluelight. I've been in the sector, in the non-profit sector, the membership space, for sort of 20 plus years. I originally, my first experience in the sector was working actually on the client side. I was the head of IT for the NHS Confederation, which is a membership body trade association, where we implemented a membership CRM and extended it, expanded it, worked closely with the supplier to do that. And was involved in the user group and the development piece there. Excuse me. And from there, I left to go and join and help set up Heart Square, who are an independent consultancy service in the sector. We used to specialise dedicated purely to the non-profit sector, particularly membership bodies. And that's where I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to work with a few of the unions that you can see, the logos next to our pictures there. I got to work with some of them during my time at Heart Square, which was great. That was about 12 years that I was at Heart Square. And then I've come across, like I say, to Bluelight now, where I'm the delivery director. So ultimately, I'm responsible for the successful delivery of our projects. Successful delivery meaning they come in on time, they come in on budget, they maintain scope, and they maintain quality, which is all really important to us. I'm joined today by James Wilcox and James Leach, as you can see. They're going to be presenting shortly, presenting and demoing some of our software solutions shortly, so they'll introduce themselves at that time. But for the moment, I will just give a brief introduction to Bluelight, and then just talk a little bit about the kind of the key themes for today's event before passing over to the guys. So if I just move forward, Bluelight, who are we? For those of you who don't know us, we are one of the leading providers of digital solutions to the non-profit sector, to the membership bodies and trade unions, associations, charities. We use best-in-class technology like Microsoft and Umbraco. This is stuff that you'd expect, I'm sure, of us being here today. You know, we deploy CRM solutions and more, portals, web, digital platforms, etc. We pride ourselves on being integration and data specialists. They're particularly key nowadays when you're looking at technology replacement solutions and whole ecosystems. So that's something that we're proud of. But probably the piece on there that we're most proud of actually is that we're employee owned. So we are an employee owned trust, which was fantastic thing to have achieved, and enables us to be confident in our legacy and in the persistence of our culture. So that's something that we're really proud of and talk about a lot. The logos at the bottom there, I'm not going to run through them all, but that, again, something you're probably used to seeing, which is a list of some of the clients that we're working with already, membership bodies primarily, a couple of charities thrown in there as well, to give you a sense of the spread of organisations that we work with. But yes, that is us. Now, I think, if I'm right, I think we might be running a quick poll before we, or as we move into the next section, but that's out of my hands. I shall leave that to Chris. I think is going to do that. In the meantime, what I'm going to do, I was going to build this slide, but I'm actually going to put it all up together for the sake of time. I think it'd probably be better to do that.
Your poll is now live, Rob. If you want to, you want delegates to respond to that now.
Oh, brilliant! Thanks, Jen. Yeah, if you could respond to it whilst we're talking, and again, like towards the end of the session, I'm going to. Like I say, I've got a couple of bits and pieces to talk about now. Then the two Jameses will show you some of our solution, and towards the end of the session, we'll have time to look at the results of the poll, to take any questions and respond to any comments in the chat. So we'll look at all of that in advance, but before like I say, towards the end of the session. That's right. Thanks, Jen. Yes, sorry. So from the conversations that we have with unions and membership bodies in general, I suppose, but particularly with unions, this is just pulling together some of the kind of themes that we see coming through in those conversations, in the work that we do. I'm I imagine a lot of this is familiar to you, but I think that's the, just wanted to set a bit of context because this is the key topic through or purpose of your day and your event. So, we have conversations around digital organizing. Things have changed. The traditional model where most of the organizational organizing activities and the relationship building comes from in person, which is a particular aspect of unions, which has always been very strong, and enables people to build trust, nurture relationships, etc. That still persists, obviously, but it now needs to be augmented by digital organizing, which involves different skills, different platforms, different technologies, different tools. So definitely something that's on people's radar. Cybersecurity, I mean, it touches onto the platform side of things, but basically, unions hold a lot of personal information, a lot of information about individuals, which is seen as high value for malicious actors. So that, alongside the fact that unions are visible, very public, very high profile organizations of themselves as well, makes you a target. So it's really important both to have robust security in respect of malicious actors, but also a lot of cybersecurity issues, a lot of data breaches, etc., are just caused by human error, carelessness, whatever you want to call it, genuine mistakes. So cybersecurity training is equally important alongside the kind of the technical security measures that you can put in place. Engaging members, probably the core theme, hence in the middle here, and we'll come back to this over the next couple of slides as well. The ability to engage with, connect, and maintain relationships with a wide demographic of members is super important. That's where the ability to actually talk across different platforms about different topics, but about the topics that are of interest to your audiences. So you're not just with one message just blasting everybody with that. You can look at the different interests that different people have. Might be because of their job role, might be because of their career stage, might be because of a situation that they're in, but making sure that you can talk consistently and honestly and openly across multiple channels, but to different ears, actually, is one way of looking at different audiences, is really, really important. Combating misinformation and disinformation, I suppose, in our heads, kind of misinformation being the kind of lazy narratives that people feel free to share out there. Where a union is actually one of the most trusted, should be one of the most trusted voices, in the workplace, definitely, and in society, to be perfectly honest. So combating misinformation, i.e. the accidental side of things, or the non-malicious side, but also the disinformation, which is ever more persistent nowadays, unfortunately, means that it's important to be thinking about this, to be understanding how you can be heard above the disinformation, whether it's kind of proactive, taking countermeasures, or just about making sure that you are getting your message heard above the other noise across different platforms, and making sure, again, you're being transparent and consistent and proactive on that. And then the final thing there, the digital divide. Digital is not natively inclusive, and it's really vital to cater for everybody who needs your services and values them and relies on them. So ensuring that there are offline alternatives at times, there are training options available for people, is really super important to unions as well. Just moving ahead, I'll do the same here. Actually, this is a bit more the kind of if those are the big ticket items and the themes, this is more about kind of what we're talking about in practice. Efficient operational systems for staff, I think, is really important to highlight, because often we get kind of, there's a lot of talk about the digital platforms, the member-facing platforms and experiences and interactions, but it's also really important that you have efficient and effective systems for staff, so that they can process information and data for you and feed those that engagement, but equally so that they feel they have the ability and the capacity to engage rather than just administer memberships or something along those lines. Enables them to feel better about the work that they do and to contribute more effectively to the union and its objectives. Obviously, like I say, as we've talked about a lot already, the transactional systems for members, super important. Members want to be able to, particularly in this digital era, they expect kind of quick response, easy to use systems, non-repetitive. Don't have to keep filling in their details, keep identifying themselves, that kind of idea. So just effective and efficient transactions they want to have, makes the interaction with you really smooth, means they come back and stay engaged. Multi-com channel communications we talked about a bit on the previous slide, but this making sure that there is a strategy behind it, both to make sure that the communications are consistent and appropriate, different formats for different platforms, that kind of idea. Challenging, but hence the need for a strategy in the middle of it to coordinate it all. And aligned with that really is the connected systems and data. I think it's one of the big challenges for unions using the more traditional old school or long-standing, should we call it, the technologies. One of the biggest limitations they have compared to modern technology is the ability to integrate. So, obviously that's a whole conversation we could have separately about, is it one system that does everything? The kind of nirvana on that. Probably not viable for most people, probably doesn't exist, frankly, because there are some really fantastic specialist tools around. The key then being, actually the last 2 points on there, the key then being to make sure that your data is synchronized and connected and your systems are integrated, so you're not duplicating, you're not multi-key and stuff, but you're feeding the core knowledge that the union holds and also able to enable the data-driven engagement at the end of that slide. Finally then, the whole building slide thing didn't work, did it really? Some, again, big ticket items, I guess, key takeaways. I know we're only kind of scraping the surface. We could spend all day talking about the information that's out there across these 3 slides, really. But I wanted to just kind of spend a few minutes at least setting the scene for your day and for the, like I say, playing back some of the conversations that we're having with unions. Member engagement strategy, really, really important. Again, it sounds a bit bread and butter, but it's something that with some work that I did a few years back with Unison actually was really central to what they were able to achieve, because it was a way of bringing everyone together, making sure everybody understood objectives and priorities and dependencies, but everything being focused on being member-centric, which, becomes a bit of a cliche, but actually that is what we're talking about here. It's about making sure that members are at the heart of everything that we do, and that we're very clear that we understand what they need from us and are able to provide it, and equally what we need back from them, because it is a two-way relationship. Mentioned earlier, I think, about when talking about the services we provide, it's important to look at the full range of technology, all of the technologies that that are contributing to running your organization and engaging with your members. We're not just talking here about replacing the member database or implementing a new CRM. It's about looking wider, being holistic, and looking at all of the landscape of technology to make sure things are working in harmony and are connected. In a similar vein, I think knowledge management is something that gets underestimated sometimes. But when we're talking about an excellent customer service experience, which is what your members are looking for and what you are looking to give them, knowledge management is actually key, because what you're kind of doing is you're kind of profiling, you're profiling essentially your members, the individuals who belong to the union, and you have a wealth of knowledge that can serve them and help them and support them and guide them. And what you're looking to do is to match those things up so that when somebody asks a question or when somebody is in need, you're able to serve the right knowledge and the right information to them at the point that they need it. And knowledge management is actually the key behind all that, making sure you're classifying and categorizing and cataloging your information in a way that matches how you're profiling your members, so that you can bring the two together when you need to. Focus then on data quality, and again, harking back to something that Jen said about AI and it being ever more present in our lives, I guess. I think it's getting to a point, where it's a concept as much as a tool. It's not about saying, we can use Copilot specifically in standalone fashion. It's about actually understanding what AI can do for us, which is its ability to drill into data, to mine information at speed and at scale at a level that we can't in the timeframes that we would need to. But quality becomes ever more important, because if you're exposing more data to your members, and B, you're relying on it more for a range of services and a range of decisions, then the quality has to be really tip top on that. So important to focus on quality, and maybe more than quantity discuss. Finally, then, just to say, yeah, it's about planning for tomorrow and continuous improvement. There's a world where we build a war chest and invest in new technology and then degrade it over 5 to 7 years, according to what our accountants guide us with. Modern technology is designed to be extended, to be built upon, and to evolve with us. So whilst projects may be in shorter phases, but still you're talking sort of 18 months or more to replace a key piece of technology, right? Have bigger vision, give yourself the flexibility to vary as you go, but give yourself frameworks and guide ropes to work within, and plan boldly and resource for the longer term, as it says there. I think that's just about enough from me, I would suggest. I'm sure you'd agree. So I will pass across to James and James, who are going to talk more about the technology that we use and our solutions, and to show you some of the stuff that we do. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So I'll intro myself first very briefly. So I'm James Wilcox, Head of Consulting at Bluelight. I've been at Bluelight now for just over 6 years, sort of specialising in, as Rob said earlier, not-for-profit organisations. My experience prior to that is approximately sort of 13, 14 years with Microsoft technologies generally in consulting capacity. And then even before that, I've been working in software consulting generally for about 20 years. So that's my sort of background. I'll just hand over to James Leach briefly to do an intro before coming back to myself. If that's all right, James.
Thanks, James. So, hey everybody, I'm James. I've been working with trade unions for probably 11, 12 years at this point. About half of that was in Australia and New Zealand, and half back here in the UK. I can see quite a few names on this call, actually, people I've worked with in the past, so you guys know who you are. Good to see you again. And yeah, I suppose what I bring to the table here is a knowledge of trade union processes, how you guys work, what your key pain points are. I've been with Bluelight for about just over a year now, and yeah, looking forward to showing you a bit of software from our side of things, and seeing what you think. So back to you, James.
Yeah, Rob, I don't know if you could just move that slide on. I think it's still you in control there. Yeah, it's just a brief slide just to set the scene in terms of the technologies that we work with. So it's obviously a vast array there, but just to kind of illustrate the fact that everything we do pretty much and everything we focus on is in the Microsoft world. So there's lots of buzzwords there, but effectively our core platform is built on Microsoft Dynamics as part of the Power Platform. But we utilize all of the services that we possibly can from Microsoft in terms of Azure, Power BI, as has been mentioned, Copilot. And then on the right-hand side, which might be a bit of an outlier, is the Umbraco Cloud. That's the technology we use for building our web portal, but even that is fundamentally built on Microsoft technology and is hosted on Microsoft Azure. And then, Rob, if you wouldn't mind just moving that on. Yeah, so when we refer to Blue CRM, that's our offering built on top of those technologies. So everything we're showing you today from a CRM back office perspective is within that Blue CRM world, and that's split up into a number of different modules. I'm not going to read through each and every one of those, but effectively we've broken down core functionality that's necessary for running your finance operations, membership events, education, for example. So I'm not going to read through every single one of those, but we'll touch on obviously primarily on the sort of the core finance and the membership layers today. And then Rob, if you wouldn't mind just moving that on again. And then just to highlight, if we do have time at the end, we'll just try and show how some of that links in with our Blue CMS, which, as I say, is built on the Umbraco Cloud. So Umbraco is a standalone web technology, perfectly, fully featured, that could host websites in its own right. And we've built custom integrations with everything within Blue CRM, sort of a bespoke direct integrations to read and write data and surface all of that stuff you've got in your CRM to external users logging into your website. So that's it, Rob. And then I think, Jim, it's over to you.
Thanks, James. So I think there are kind of a few pain points, like from my experience, primarily working with APT Stratum system back in the day, and moving on to the Militech systems and some of the more recent systems from ClearCore, such as Merlin. deploying those solutions, working with those solutions, and applying enhancements to those solutions over time has raised a lot of kind of common pain points, some of which we're going to cover today. We don't have a huge amount of time, but hopefully giving you a bit of a whistle-stop tour of these, you'll get an idea of how we approach these. So the first one that's a common thing that crops up is the ability to track collective bargaining as an organisation. I found that often branches will track this separately. It's often on spreadsheets. National teams don't have a kind of decent visibility of the data, or the ability to bring that data together with things like clause comparison tools. We have a collective bargaining solution that can track this within the central CRM and then deliver it out to websites. So from a member's perspective, access my agreement. I know they'd usually go to their employer directly to get that, but give them a reason to log into the members area to access it themselves, give them summaries of that information, and then also track it from a reporting perspective at the higher levels. So all of that's there in the system. And next bit, please, Rob. Thanks. Payroll deduction. We know this, or check off, deduction at source, whatever you might term it. The ability to process the banking from the employer, so take that money from the employer and then effectively allocate it out to the correct members in the system. We have a process for tracking that, for keeping it in the system, and for managing it in an efficient way. Next one, Rob. Fully integrated web as well. So as James briefly said there, we have the Umbraco solution, which allows us to deploy pretty much any piece of data from the CRM into a web environment. So those of you on Stratum who use My Page will be familiar with this concept. We kind of take it a step further with the level of data flexibility and the level of trackability in the system, with integration with a number of modern tools. So a very useful feature that we have in the Blue CRM. And also union density mapping. Another area that I find is commonly lacking in systems, and is also something that all unions want to track from my experience and want to be able to effectively report on. So we have tools to track union density at a given workplace, at a given employer, which roll up level by level and allow in-depth reporting at that point too. So easy to update, easy to maintain, and because we can deploy it once again to the fully integrated web, we can create things like an organizer area online. So an organizer can log in, update density figures, a shop steward, a rep can go in, update those figures too from their level as well. And all of this rolls up to that central point of truth in the system, which can then be reported on and maintained. So very quickly, those are kind of 4 points that we'll show you actually in system. There's obviously a lot more in the system that we can show, a lot more that we'd love to talk to you about, but we're a little bit restricted on time, so we'll show you what we can. In the meantime as well, there's a Q&A section in the session, so feel free to drop a question in there if you want to ask something, and we'll leave a bit of time at the end to address what we can in there. So James, I think over to you to share your screen.
That's it. So hopefully that kicks Rob out and shares my screen. So hopefully you can see
looking good.
Dynamics. Yeah, so obviously, yeah, as James says, it's a very, very whistle-stop tour, because I could genuinely talk about this for hours and hours and hours the whole day. So it's going to be really, really quick. And I appreciate some people may have maybe using Dynamics already. Other people may never have seen Dynamics before. So I'm just going to very, very briefly explain. This is Dynamics login page. So I've logged into a demo environment here, and this is the application switcher. So the modules that I mentioned earlier on, such as finance, membership, etc., they're all listed here as applications that I can jump into to look at the functionality of those. Those are kind of intertwined with standard Microsoft tools such as Customer Insights if you're doing marketing through there, Customer Service if you want to use Microsoft's case management tool, etc. So they're all sort of merged together. There's no there's no switching between different areas of the system that's required. They're all sort of merged and put together. Now, we put together this application here called BlueCRM by Bluelight. This is a demo application. So I just jump into that one there. This is kind of all singing, all dancing. So if I click on the bottom left there to change area, it's got everything pretty much that we offer in the product. Clearly, we're not going to have time to go through all those today. We're going to do a really quick drill down into a couple of key areas. But just to kind of flash that up on screen, again, it's a modern web user interface. It's all very sort of interactive. It's easy to use, user friendly, etc. I'm going to go into a pre-created example here. So if I just jump across to accounts, and then if I pull up an example, I'm just going to do a search for an organization. So this is a collection of organizations that fall under a head office here. So we've got Brickmark Limited as a head office, and then we've got a few stores set up underneath it. So if I just click on the hierarchy, really simple. As I say, it's just two-tiered. So we've got a parent organization and then 3 organizations underneath it. Obviously, I appreciate it could be much more complex than that. We'll come into the head office in a little bit of time, but I'm just going to jump into one of the sort of those branches underneath.
So I suppose under the normal structures in the other systems that I mentioned earlier, you'd consider this a workplace attached to an employer.
Yeah, so I've gone into here again. I'm not going to click through every single one of these, but you get the idea. There's obviously lots of key information, the location, the timeline in terms of any communications that have been had with that organization or any employees of that organization. On the right hand side, I've got myself down as the primary contact, but I've also got a number of other contacts that are connected with that particular workplace. I'm going to go into, so before we go into, there's other tabs I do want to jump into from an organisation perspective in terms of membership and finance and some of the union density and bargaining. I just wanted to highlight quickly what it looks like from the perspective of a contact. So I'm going to jump into, here's one I created earlier, Edgar. So they're connected with the Brickmark Birmingham store. This is all details related to this contact, this individual. And obviously there's clearly different information here. You know, the address details. We've got employment data, where they currently work, where they have worked previously. And if I just go into membership very quickly, again, this is where I would see all the membership history that person has ever held with us. If I go into their current record, just to show very briefly what that looks like. So this is this contact holding this grade. This is their current banding, the valid from and to dates, and effectively this is the fee that they would pay. So we've set up a very basic example here with multi-banding. So their 19,000 currently sits them in this particular bracket. If I just change that to 30,000, just very quickly.
This is kind of where pay scales come into play. So you pay a fee based on the amount of your pensionable salary.
Yeah, and you'll kind of see it's just recalculating there to get, okay, well, your band has effectively changed and therefore you would owe a different amount. I'm going to just go through this really quickly. So at the moment, this membership is set to be paid by Edgar himself. I'm going to actually change that just for the sake of the demo. I'm going to change that to say, well, actually, this particular membership is being paid for via their organisation. So I'm going to say that the finances for this should be pointed to Brickmark Birmingham and generate an order. So that's effectively a charge that we would expect that particular organisation now to be responsible for paying.
The eagle-eyed amongst you there will notice we attach that to the workplace, but we can attach it at the employer level. And if you have an administration unit or an employer group above that, we can attach the pay by concept if it is payroll deduction at those different levels.
Okay, so that's just, I just wanted to very quickly show some of that before we go back later and use one of those examples. We'll try and pick up that order when we're kind of doing the payroll deduction piece a bit later on. So if I jump into the Brickmark head office, I'm just going to use that pin there just to jump back and show some of those other key features that we've highlighted in terms of union density. So I'm just going to jump into there. So we're now at the head office, the parent level, and I can see the workplaces underneath it and some key stats associated there. And Jim, I don't know if you want to just talk briefly around that.
Yeah, so the idea is these are essentially a series of totals stored against the workplace primarily. So we've got the number of employees at the workplace, which somebody would manually input. We have the number of members that are members of another union at that workplace, again, manually input either by a staff member at this level or either an organizer or a rep at their respective level. And all of that information is either collected in the web and displayed on here or directly entered into here. All of that would then be rolled up and compared against the total number of members on the system, automatically calculated based on the information that's in the database, which then gives us the total level of density. So we could either look at that at the workplace level to see the workplace density, or we roll it up and view it at this level, which is on screen, and view it at the employer level. And all of that is calculated and displayed. Almost goes without saying that all this data is there sitting in the background, not just displayed on this screen. So if you wanted to incorporate this into your reporting, into dashboards that contain live data, you can do that if you need to.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. So again, this is very, very fast paced, but I'll just flip back now after highlighting that to some of the ways that you might do the payroll deduction piece. Now, again, Jim might talk around it in a bit more detail later on. Clearly, this isn't expected to be a fully manual process, but if I just show you the data structures involved in that. So if I've jumped across to the finance tab, so this is any historic charges that are associated with this particular organization. We've got the concept actually. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong record there. Let me jump into the Birmingham store. That's similarly into the finance tab. So we've got this concept of a payment header. So that would be where you've received some money and you're then expected to allocate that income out to various existing charges in the system. So I'm going to log £1,000 payment. And Jim, I don't know if
so this is essentially your banking process within payroll deduction. So this is you've received the bulk payment from the employer or the workplace or the employer group or the national admin team, whatever the case may be. You're recording and stamping the system to say we've got this amount of money from that employer that we need to go on to allocate to individuals.
That's it. So this will keep a track of, effectively at the moment, I've just logged that there's a receipt been made. Obviously, at the moment, I haven't actually allocated it at all. So there's 0 allocated and then that 4,000 unallocated. So if I click on new payment, which is effectively an allocation, and say, right, I'm going to receipt £300 today against, and then if I look for orders, hopefully we should see.
So essentially what we're doing here is showing a manual addition to the allocation. So it's we can pick up from the system individuals who are expected to pay, but I'm quite aware that as part of your standard process, we would have a bulk import for you here. So we tend to do this per customer, where you would have employer-specific templates, ideally on a CSV file, that you import that will then populate the list of payments to allocate.
Yeah. And just to expect that the amount doesn't have to actually match what's in this. So I could say, well, actually £100 against this particular order here. So I just log that one.
So again, just for the purposes of demonstration, we're adding a couple of people onto this that on the assumption that you might need to add people manually if needed, but would expect that as a normal day-to-day process, you'd be doing some sort of import based on a file that the employer gives you.
Yeah, so
just populate that payments list at the bottom.
That's it. Yeah, just be obviously file format dependent. But yeah, so in the interest of time, I'm not going to log too many more. But effectively, you can see now we've got a couple of allocated amounts against that, and we've kind of got this running total about how much have we got yet left to that's unallocated. So yeah, I don't know, Jim, you have mentioned before about what to do with any discrepancy in terms of what's left over.
Yeah, so you'll inevitably end up with some level of discrepancy based on what you've banked versus what you've actually allocated. You can then choose with the remaining unallocated where that goes. You know, does it go onto the Do you store it against the record for the next allocation, maybe? Do you need to credit it back to the employer if needed? There are options around that that allow you to control what happens there. We can also add things like tolerances based on user. So this user is allowed to write off certain amounts of additional unallocated if needs be. Again, based on the people in the audience, I think you probably know what I mean here from other systems, writing off, tracking it. It's all there in the system.
I'm just very, very wary of time. This is very, very fast paced. But so I'll jump across now back to the Brickmart head office and just show the last piece in CRM before hopefully we've got enough time to show a little bit on the portal. And that's just on the bargaining piece here. So if I just, this is effectively any bargaining agreements that this particular organisation has been involved in, either currently or historically. So if I just jump into, I think that's the one with the best example there, Jim, and I don't know if you want to just give a bit of an explanation there.
Sure. So once again, we're seeing this as a kind of national staff level at this point. This is the agreement that's most current associated with this employer. You'll note in the top right corner there's an employer's tab, an employer's table. We do have the capacity in here to have things like multi-employer agreements. Not done so much in the UK, but you know, in other areas that can come into play a little bit. But essentially, that is a concept of grouping. So we could apply other groupings to this if needed, sector-based, that kind of thing, and type of employee, whatever the case may be. We can group them. Within the agreement itself, you'll notice we have some metadata on the left, start dates, end dates, a current status, and then we separately identify the clauses in that agreement in the bottom right. It's a manual process if you choose to go through that and identify the clauses that are in the agreement, but doing that will allow things like clause comparison via your reporting tools, and also delivery of that information to the web as well. So if you wanted to, for example, give this to a member and say, yep, you can access your bargaining agreement document, the actual file, by logging into our site, but here are the clauses in there, and we've listed them separately for you, so you don't have to trawl through the main document. So all of that capacity is in there to allow you to do that, should you choose to. Or if you just want it as a storage tool, just to keep it stored, keep it tracked in a central location, your staff members can get into this. Organisers via the website and organiser area, and as I say, basic updates via the rep area as well. So a lot of functionality around this. We're giving you a very high level here, but again, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this type of process. But yeah, it's a very efficient way of tracking this and keeping it in a central location rather than all over the place with branches in spreadsheets and so on.
It. And then just again, very, very conscious of the time. If I just jump across to contact records, this is my contact record. But what I've done just before this session is linked myself to the Birmingham store. And if I just drill down a little bit further into that employment record, we have the concept of roles. Now that can be used to just determine, okay, well, yes, they work at this organisation, but they may hold one or more different roles within that. One of the key ones is a portal administrator role. So if I log into the portal as this contact, I will have certain functionality to manage the account that I'm then linked with. If I logged in with a contact record that didn't hold that role, I could only manage my own details. So if I just switch across to this particular tab here, this is now obviously a vanilla portal. So you have to use your imagination slightly. This is a demo website. With very, very limited branding against it. But effectively, this is now an Umbraco hosted website, which is already connected with the CRM system we've just shown there. So if I click sign in and sign in with the same details, so that's my contact record effectively. And sign in. So now the portal understands, or the website understands who I am. It's dropped me into the account section, but effectively that can then drive content that appears on other areas of the website, you know, to drive certain events, information, or drive the user to do a particular thing. So I can manage my details here. I'm not going to click through every single one, but for example, I can obviously do the basics to sort of manage my own personal details, my communication preferences. But just very, very quickly, because I'm logged in as an administrator, I have this extra option here at an organizational level to see the employees rather of a given organization, add or remove them, and I can also manage certain key high-level details. So the expectation here is you may give certain users access to log in and manage the details on behalf of that organization.
Yeah, so if it was a rep, for example, you could allow them into this to advise of either new additions to the organization that are members that need to be processed, or basic changes of details to members within that workplace.
That's it. And I think we've got all of 3 minutes left if if we don't stop there. So I don't know if there have been any questions posted.
Can't see any direct questions in the Q&A section, but I mean, it's worth noting. I imagine a lot of this it probably rings true with existing processes based on people on the call that I can see that I recognise. It's also worth noting, I suppose, from my perspective, that I have an understanding of data structures in things like Stratum and Militech systems, and I know the challenges that you guys face when it comes to migrating data, moving on to another system, and what those data structures look like. So, worth keeping that in mind as we look at this type of stuff. But a couple of other bits and pieces that are of particular interest to me, just to briefly call them out. We do have AI tools in the system here. So again, the eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed when we were looking at timelines in particular, you can use AI to sort of summarize the activity on somebody's record and give an intelligent view of kind of what's going on. But from my perspective, I'd advise a little bit of caution around AI and the use of AI tools. I think it's probably the biggest challenge that unions are going to face over the next kind of 5 years. And things like AI chatbots, for example, on a front-end website, sure, from our perspective, we can do it, but whether that's the right thing to do for a trade union, I'm not so sure given the optics. So I think from our perspective, it's more a case of leveraging AI tools to smooth the jobs, make the jobs more efficient of the staff that are working on the system. Data insights, as Rob said, and also tools for basic generation where you're issuing communications. So, yeah, just one of the things that's particularly on my mind, given the topics on this session.